Hello, Tareck Adeeb community. How are you all? Yeah, sorry I couldn't make it yesterday, just simply because I was just getting back from a festival at the weekend, which I'm going to discuss with you all, which was, was amazing. So I can't wait to tell you about this. Just waiting for people to come in. So really, the big question I want to ask everybody was, how was your launch last weekend? How was the Jupiter Square Pluto opposing Mars for you? That's really what I want to know today. The good news is the astrology this week really isn't saying too much. We've come out of what has been 3 months ever since March, and obviously it goes back further, but it's been a few months. I've been talking about this for so long now. And we've got over the other side. We've actually made it over the other side. We're at the new moon in Taurus, and that's it now. We've come through this launch. This is what the launch kit was all about. We were talking about this all year. We named the launch kit about this conjunction of Jupiter going into Taurus, and that's happened. So really, what were you doing at the weekend? How was it for you? How was your launch? And the thing is, we've got to remember that everyone's unique. Everyone's at different stages of life. Like, for example, I spoke to some people and they had just a very quiet weekend, and sometimes quiet stillness, nothing happening is a very positive thing, especially if there's been a lot of turbulence, everything's been pretty intense, then that's a positive, so you've got to remember that. And at the same time, someone like myself has had an incredibly dynamic and fascinating and beguiling weekend, which is really giving me so much juice about, what Pluto and Aquarius is going to be, what Jupiter and Taurus is going to be. And ultimately next year, when Jupiter conjuncts Uranus, that is when we're really going to see such a proliferation of what I'm talking about right now. It's all about that transit now, and I'm very optimistic about the rest of the year, even though in June, when we talk about Pluto going back into Capricorn and Venus going into Venus going into Leo, that's when we're really going to start seeing sort of like the tremors of what's going on in the world right now. I mean, obviously, Ukraine war still, it seems to be escalating. The financial system isn't getting any better. So all of that we've been talking about last year, and we know that this is, a critical time. But really, this is the bifurcation that I've been talking about as well. This is about the energy of things going up and things going down. And, sometimes, like I say, steady away, just normal, just seems boring, isn't such a bad place to be. And I've mentioned this before, on my podcasts, on these lives. But if it's going down, if you're starting to feel that, this is the problem with denial, with willful ignorance, with apathy, because you've got to take action, and that's a scary part when one doesn't do that. And likewise, if you're feeling really high right now, like I'm feeling really high, really jubilant, really excited, then it's all about the follow-up. So let me explain to you what happened to me this weekend. Here we go. Yeah, last week, surprising changes. Yep, right, okay. So people are feeling the shift now with Jupiter into Taurus, and you've got to pay attention to this, because this is the exciting part. This is what I've been waiting for. Now, like I say, there's a bifurcation going on. For everyone, it's not the same. Some people are just, steady away, and they're sort of like the meek, like inherit the earth kind of thing. And then there's the people who are going up, and they're the ones who are going to, be the way, show the way and be the light, in a lot of ways, or certainly be on the exponential wave. And then there's those that are going down because, they haven't made the shift. They haven't woken, to the reality of what's happening. That things are going to change or are changing, and they're still in denial about it. They're not making those shifts. They're not taking a punt, let's say, on certain things. They're not cashing out and getting ready for the dip. They're relying on the pension, they're not really aware of what potentially is going to come. And what they're doing is really, they're just praying for a soft landing, let's say, or, hope about things, or in denial about things. So really, everyone has a chance. Like, for example, I was just at VCon, which was Gary Vee's festival. And it's funny because I was chatting to a few people about Gary Vee, and no one really knows. These people just had no idea who he was. And it's strange for me, maybe because I've been in the digital industry for such a long time. And just to say to everyone here, if you're listening to this, you need to know about Gary Vee. You need to be a part of that. Or, the whole point of my mentorship, the whole point of my, my ethos is for all of you to be authentic, is also to show the way, or to get involved and project your unique gifts and abilities in the world. That's why people who get readings from me, that's what I'm helping them to get into their authenticity. My mentorship, to take action, and how we can profit from this time and be aware of what's coming. That's the whole idea of it, And someone like Gary Vee, he's absolutely, on board with that shift. He's a Gen Xer, So again, the Gen Xers, this is all part of this movement right now, are really here to show the way. It's easy for Pluto and Libra Gen Xers to sort of be passive, or to think, oh, well, we'll leave it to the kids to do it, or, we don't know about the technology, so we're not going to do anything about it. And that's a problem, because we're the ones, the Gen Xers, here to show the way in a lot of ways, because we have the wisdom of internet. We existed before the internet came into the fore. The millennials are digital natives, They're the ones who are already embodied with the technology. And then obviously all the other generations after, like the Gen Z, the Zennials, I think it is, they're all obviously embodied with the technology as well. So the thing is that, when we saw influences, when we saw that, and obviously Gary Vee was well on it. I mean, I can tell you a bit more about my relationship with Gary Vee in a minute, but it's just the point I'm trying to make here is that we need role models in the world right now. We need people who are passionate, excited, aware of themselves. That's the real secret. That's why astrology is so important at this particular time. As long as you're with when you take a reading, for example, it's got to resonate with you. It's got to be something that you feel, I like that person and that person resonates with me. Obviously, there's so many astrologers out there at the moment who know a little bit, and you can do so much with ChatGPT now that it's a lot of astrologers are going to be out of business, no doubt. I mean, a lot of everyone's going to be out of business. I mean, you think about designers, you think about all sorts of things. But having said that, if you use it with your authenticity, it's an amazing tool for acceleration. And that's why you've got to embody, the technology, Pluto in Aquarius. And likewise with Jupiter into Taurus, which I've been waiting for, this square that's just happened. Again, this integration of technology into the Earth. So fixed Earth is Taurus, and Pluto and Aquarius. We had the Saturn Jupiter conjunction already. We've had that proliferation we've seen in the last 3 years of technology coming in. So again, if you're ahead of the curve, if you understand what's going on, then you're obviously going to be relevant. Not just that, you're going to find your uniqueness in the world. You're going to find your tribe. And you're going to monetize it. This is the beauty of this time. Like, I've been saying this for ages now. If you've got a gift and in your ability, I've said this as an analogy. If you're a DJ, like for example, I've been DJing for years now, then I could have my own slot in the metaverse. DJing to, let's say, hundreds of thousands of people. Every single person just pays me $1, let's say, for every set if they wanted to. Then, you just imagine how much money potentially I'll be earning, which you could never do that, really, unless you were a high-flying DJ. And even then, it's very difficult, when you see the music industry, you see Napster and how it's all played out. But all of that could change. So you should never give up on your dreams, is what I'm trying to say. And that's why I'm so excited right now about what's happening. So just to put context into all of this, like, for example, the reason why I'm maybe familiar with Gary Vee is because, I was working in digital media, worked at Google briefly, and I also worked in advertising and radio. So because I was doing all those things, I became very aware of the shift, from the old world into the new world. Especially anyone who's into music will understand this because of when Napster came on and all of these sorts of things. From the 80s, Abnormal Profits, these behemoth record labels suddenly got disintegrated and destroyed, from Napster, which was technology. So technology totally disrupted that industry. And we've got Spotify now, and a lot of people complaining about that, the artists. And we're just waiting for this NFT, or whether it changes into a different world, a different thing, because now AI is here. So when AI integrates with NFTs, and it proliferates into this metaverse or the blockchain, then it's like everything's different. You know, it's similar to when websites were not really that seemingly relevant, and then obviously Google came along, it became a lot more significant, and then it moved into social media, i.e. Facebook, and then streaming, you know, it suddenly changed everything. You know, everybody was on websites then. You know, before that time, people were like, oh, it's boring, it's archaic, what's this for? But then here we are. So the acceleration of things, and this is why this conference was so important that I've just been to, it was called VCon. And I really think everyone who listens to me, you know, everyone who's a part of my tribe, really needs to be part of V-Friends as well. You know, I need to learn about it, because, you know, I'm going to be massively a part of this community now, you know, no doubt about it. And there's many other communities as well, you know, that I'm a part of, that I'm going to really bring together. But what was amazing about this community was just, you know, some of the speakers there were phenomenal. I mean, Deepak Chopra obviously is a huge influence of mine anyway. You know, it's someone who I've been listening to and studying for years. So it was great to have someone like that there. And there was a lot of philanthropists and, you know, people who are really making a difference, you know, and that's my vibe. You know, that's what I'm interested in, you know. I'm interested, I mean, obviously astrology is very useful and I'm really into it, and I've been studying it for so many years. But I've said to you before, my art, my philosophy, you know, what I'm here to do is all about, you know, it is about art, it is about humanitarianism, it is about soft skills. That's why I relate to Gary Vee so much, because the people there were wildly successful, and the people there, their stories and everything they talked about was brilliant, you know, because they were all showing, you know, and this is what I love about America. I mean, you know, no doubt about it, it was a very American thing. I don't think you could have had something like that anywhere else, you know, because, you know, that spirit of go for it, you know, the spirit of embodying the technology, the free world, you know, and dream big and all that was wonderful to me. I love all that. I'm really into all of that, you know. So, you know, what was most important about that festival was the fact that the people there were just wonderful. You know, there was so many nice, wonderful, kind, open people, you know, and everybody, and how they'd orchestrated it, you know, the app that they had, you could make friends with people. And Gary Vee was just saying, look, the best thing you can do, you know, is speak to the people next to you, make those relationships, and that's how we're going to create the change. And I totally agree with that. I mean, you know, I worked for Dale Carnegie, you know, and, you know, that spirit of soft skills is just in my DNA now. And that's very much what Tareck Adeeb is all about. It's about empowerment, you know, it's about how we can make the difference. It's not just about astrology, you see, there's much more to it, you know. It's about your art, your uniqueness, it's about community, it's about us really making the difference. So, you know, to be at this particular stage of this year right now, with this Jupiter into Taurus, with this Pluto in Aquarius, even though it's going to shift back into Capricorn, and that's when next month we're going to start seeing now the tremors of what's coming. You know, we're really going to have a quite interesting summer. However, having gone to that festival, being at that excitement, you know, the bifurcation, going up, being around the spirit of all those people. I mean, I don't know how many people were there, maybe 5,000, something like that. And all of those people, I mean, we're talking pioneers, you know, in that industry, pioneers in the NFT space, pioneers with, you know, AI, or certainly embodying the art with AI. I met a wonderful person who's doing 3D animation and all that kind of stuff, and you know, and just seeing everyone together, you know, very famous people as well. You know, people have obviously been in media for years. Drew Barrymore was there, Jessica Alba was there, for famous people, but not just that. You know, like really, really heart-based, empathetic, you know, great stories, all about from zero to hero. Like, for example, you know, I mean, I when I was at Google, you know, back in 2015, and I was doing a research, and nobody in the astrology world was using ads and stuff, and this is before, you know, Facebook was doing ads, or they're just about to do it, and I've been doing radio for 23 years, you know, I could have had a podcast and all these sorts of things, and then you can get very like, oh God, I look at where I'm at right now, and you think, you know, why didn't I do it earlier, or or wow, I've missed the boat, or it's not happening fast enough, and all these sorts of things. And like for example, when I was working at Google, it was the first time someone became a YouTube millionaire. That was the first time it happened, back I think in 2015 or 2014, something like that. But again, you've got to just remember there's a timing to all of this. This is why astrology is so significant as well. Things happen at the right time. That's the point. So the fact that I'm starting now, with all of this means, this is the time to do it. And obviously it's frustrating for me, the fact that things haven't happened like I thought were going to happen this year, like the website and stuff like that. And I've got a secret, an inner circle, a group of people who are on the mentorship, for example, and all of these things are just haven't quite happened as quickly as I would have liked. That's because the timing wasn't right, and that's why you've got to love yourself more, forgive yourself, or relax, or forgive others, because everything will happen at the right time. That's the key. So even though there's loads more people doing this now, and yes, I could have had an advantage here because I was in the technology at the time, and you've seen other people who have done really well, let's say, it wasn't the right time. That's what you need to remind yourself of, However, you could start at any time. That's really important to embody here. It's all about doing it. It's all about starting. It's all about not caring so much, i.e. having, looking at yourself too much and thinking, oh, it's not right, it's not perfect. There comes a time when you've got to start as well. So all I can say is I'm feeling very optimistic. I'm feeling very passionate right now because, the last, that obviously, this journey, because again, when Gary Vee came into my life, it was really back in 2018, because it was a time when it was going through a huge crisis. I mean, both my parents have passed within this 6-year window. And at that particular time, I remember I was feeling very, lost. And then he came in and reinforced all the things that I knew I should do, which is doing this, and there's going to be a whole lot more of this. And, obviously it was interesting speaking to the people there, how many of the people, got into crypto, for example, in 2020 and 2021, whatever, and bought their first ETH. They were talking about this. I heard the story many, many times, how they bought the first ETH, to buy a Gary Vee, a V friend it's called, like, 'cause he's got lots of NFTs. And how they talked about the same story, how they bought it for a couple of grand, it went up to $5,000, they sold some of it, got a V friend, and how those V friends went up to like 60, 70 grand, and then they all crashed down, to where they are now. Some of the first wave ones are at like 20, 30 grand. Some of the other ones are at $3,000. And then it was funny because this guy called Andrew Schultz, who's a comedian, and he was ripping him to bits, which was fantastic. Talking about how a lot of these things have gone down 90%. So, obviously, the whole crypto world, the whole NFT world, went through such expansion and then dropped so dramatically that it kind of fried everyone. But what was amazing about a lot of the people there at that festival, because they all get a free ticket. For example, the ticket you had to buy on Ethereum, which was really smart too. Each ticket was an NFT. All those people kept them because they believed in him. And that's what a lot of this is to do with. It's understanding the space. It's not looking for a get-rich-quick scheme. It's seeing longevity in these things. It's the same thing as doing all this, what we're doing now. I'm compelled to do these things now because I've got to, really, out of service. It wouldn't be wise, it would be lazy in a way not to do it. I'm certainly not doing this for I could say attention or look at me. It's much more to do with I've got to do it because we've got to be here to serve. I'm still working out the structure of exactly what I'm here to do at the moment. Because it's not just astrology. Like you see a lot of people out there just doing astrology readings, and I'm offering that right now. And take advantage because I've still got the reading offer, for this month. And obviously my website will be coming out hopefully very soon. But I don't know how it's going to go. It might change somewhat, in terms of what I offer. So take advantage if it's something that, is appealing to you and something that you want to do. And you'll see more of this, as we expand anyway. But I just want to say that it's Jupiter into Taurus. I've been waiting for it, square to Pluto, now the opposition to Mars. And yes, you could look at the world right now and get pretty scared. You could see a lot of problems in the world. The Ukraine war's not abating. Yeah, that's great. And the bottom line is that we need to be optimistic. I mean, there was this guy called Charlie Rocket who absolutely loved his talk, you know what I mean? And he was, again, the most unlikeliest of person, to explain what he's been through, how he was like really at the forefront of the Atlanta music scene, and how he sadly got a brain tumor, and then, he was always overweight, and he changed that and then influenced Nike, and he's this like real interesting character that you would not expect. That's what I loved about it. That's what I love about the outlier. That's what I love about, the artist, the people who are kind of like, disenfranchised, or, they're not losing who they are. They're not conforming, basically. They're not, they're not giving up, their dream. And that's what he was saying. You've got to, be, delusional about your dream, is what he said. And I loved that. I was like, that's so right. When you dream big and you see the horizon and you see what's possible, to thwart that through trauma, through someone telling you at school that you can't do it, or through parents, saying stuff to you that, no, you've got to get a job, you've got to do this, the old world, which is radically disintegrating, radically transforming into this new world. And that's why it's so important to put yourself in the right environment of people who understand what you say, who can listen to what you've got to say, who believe in your dream. It's so important, because, when I see people in these echo chambers of fear, they're creating more fear. They're creating more of that paradigm. When you see people who are, I don't know, going out, getting wasted, being irresponsible, surrounded by, dope heads or whatever, you see it a lot in certain places these days. And how is that serving you? How is that going to inspire you? How is that going to allow you to dream big and focus on your dream and manifest your dream? Because that's where action comes in. So, I'm super excited, because what I see now, when I see that community and be around people like that, and be around wildly successful people, by the way, and very inspiring people, and how are those people, and obviously the follow-up is very important with this stuff. See, this is always the danger of going to these events, getting very high, and then suddenly coming home and then just forgetting that it all existed. Like, it's the action that counts. Just like this, when you hear these things and you buy the Thrival kit, the launch kit, it's what you do with it, it's so important. And in community, that's why we've got to share. That's why, we'll have a community very soon on the Tareck Adeeb website. You've got accessible astrology as well. And by doing that, we support each other, we listen to each other. And then we also have to be open, open to the AI, open to the technology, open to the potential, dream big, imagine, and then take action. And then by doing that, and it always starts with small steps that lead to bigger steps. And the best thing that I love about Gary Vee, though, is the empathy. That's what resonates me the most with that collective. It's the kindness. And for me, when I met the Dalai Lama when I was back in 1998, I'm showing my age now, right? But anyway, that was a very random thing for me, being up in India in the Himalaya. And then, I didn't really know much about the Dalai Lama. I'd studied Buddhism at university, but I didn't really know too much about it, about the Dalai Lama anyway. And I know there's stuff in the media about him at the moment, and there's a dark side to everything. I'm aware of these sorts of things. But sometimes for me, maybe I'm a bit naive and a bit innocent and a bit optimistic. I always focus on the content. I always focus on the message. I know there's always a story and there's always dirt connected to everyone. That's what sadly prevents a lot of people from going for it, because they have dirt. And we've all got dirt. This is the thing. We've got to get over that, because that's what keeps people in slavery. It keeps people on the couch. It doesn't allow people to be seen, because the story is what counts. You know, if you've come from the gutter and you've gone to the throne, then that's what people want to hear. You know, if you've made bad mistakes, and this is what was brilliant about that festival. You know, we're always making mistakes, and that's the crime of the education system, that you do not get rewarded for failing harder. You know, and it's only the people that get over the stigma, get over the negative belief, or the other people's opinions about them, that they have a ruthless obsession to follow through on their authenticity. They become the successful ones, and they enlighten. Like, that's the thing with Andrew Tate. Even though a lot of people, you know, don't like him, and, you know, obviously the misogynist side of things is pretty bizarre. Maybe he had a game plan. Maybe he was being ridiculous. Whatever. Again, he became wildly successful, you know, ridiculously so, to the point of, you know, even in some case, a martyr complex, you know, to the idea of becoming incarcerated as well. So it's very strange, you know, how, you know, people behave. But this is the phenomenon, I've talked about this before, the phenomenon of this time. You know, you could say someone like Gary Vee is a cult leader. You're just like Andrew Tate, you know, anyone who's on the internet, you know, where I'm a cult leader, really, in a way, you know, you're listening to this. But it's more a case of the fact that what's your legacy, and that's another thing that Gary Vee talks about a lot. You know, it's what you're going to leave behind. You know, it's all well and good making $1 million or $1 billion, but who have you served? And that's what I love about the consciousness. You know, VCon, and, you know, maybe we should all go there next year. I probably will be there, and, you know, I'm totally on board now with that community, and because of that, everyone who listens to this is as well, really, by default, because that is such a loving community, you know, such a forward-thinking community, such a dynamic community. And then when you are inspired by people like that, and you're around people like that, you know that it's going to get a lot better. You know, it's you know, it's been a very difficult time this decade so far. There's going to be more challenges. You know, there's no doubt about it. This summer's going to be challenging. You know, there's not much to talk about in the astrology this week. There's just a few minor aspects like squares, Mars. You know, how it's hitting Jupiter and the true node, as well as the Sun squaring Saturn. That's really it. But once we get into June, we're going to start seeing the ramifications of this expansion. You know, Saturn into Pisces, Pluto into Aquarius, and then when Pluto goes back into Capricorn, Venus retrogrades this summer. Then we're really going to see, you know, what the reality is, you know, i.e. the old world ending, the new world emerging, and that battle that will occur because of it. I mean, really, it goes all the way back to 2008, you know, when Pluto went into Capricorn and shuddered the whole system. Obviously, this is when the bail-ins came in, and, you know, we see bail-ins coming in right now with some of the biggest banks. So the scale of the disaster financially of the old world, you know, if you're not taking action right now, buying gold, buying Bitcoin, or, you know, it's not financial advice, but it's at least diversifying or learning about it, then the shudder that's coming, you know, could be pretty, you know, could be pretty intense this summer. You know, not just that, you know, bail-ins could happen as well, not bailouts. Actually, it was bailouts, wasn't it? That happened with Credit Suisse. Bail-ins. If that does happen, you can't access money. How's that going to affect things? So there still is a lot of madness to occur. But the good news is that when the Jupiter, the launch, you know, and what I experienced, really revealed how exciting this decade is going to be. You know, how wonderful it's going to be. You know, with good people, with kind people. You know. That's why I mentioned the Dalai Lama, you know, when he talked about that book, The Art of Happiness, was such a massive book for me. You know, it really pushed me in the direction of love your enemy, you know, not you know, get strong to destroy, or, you know, I mean, you know, there are aspects of other religions and stuff that make sense, you know, like an eye for an eye, you know, something that, you know, the idea of revenge or reaction. I kind of understand these energies more, because if you're just totally passive or, you know, pacifist, you can lose a lot of the divine masculine as well. I've started to understand that, you need balance in everything. But again, what I loved about what the Dalai Lama said was, your enemy could be your greatest teacher, and that's what I thought was fascinating. When I read that book, and you become curious about it, like, why is that person treating me badly? And then you could start to find empathy, is what Gary Vee talks about, for that person, because if that person is hateful or negative, then that's their shit. You know what I mean? It's not your stuff. And how can you find, like I say, love and empathy? And you do have to also apply discernment though as well. You have to know when to cut something off. And that was a lot going on in the last 3 years. When people were making decisions about what they should and shouldn't do, and then how that led to huge conflicts within family. I mean, wow, it was shocking. And the stories that I've heard over the last month, having travelled now, really sad. Really sad what's happened over this last month. This last 3 years. But again, this is where forgiveness comes in. This is where compassion comes in. This is where empathy comes in. And again, not losing sight of what it is that you're here to do. This grief energy, is really, really, we're so close, by the way, to the shifts of the nodes now. We've had that Scorpio eclipse, which really, really brought so much out. And again, I've been saying this as well over the last 3 months. If you get to June and your life hasn't completely been turned upside down, then maybe you can start to now steer things a bit better, which is a great thing. Because it's been very intense, this year. There's no doubt about it. It's been really, really challenging. But the good news for me, what I'm talking to you all about now, is that I feel very optimistic. I feel very excited. You do have to be a part of it. You do have to understand the technology. You at least need to give it a go or do some research in it. Otherwise you can't prosper really in this new age. Obviously, a lot of people are going the opposite way. Learning how to farm. Learning how to, grow food. And again, if you, I might need to just put this in here. Let me just do that. So obviously your basic needs are very, very important. It's very, very important to be able to have food, and that was the Thrival kit. Very important to have water, and all these sorts of things. And again, that's quite extreme, to a certain extent, but we shouldn't take things for granted, We're very lucky to have those things, if you live in the first world. Many people should go to Africa or places like that, do volunteer work and understand how good they've got it. I was chatting to some guys at the festival, and they all know that, and there's certain truth actually to, if you've got water, if you've got food, you've got it good, like say, especially if you live in America, like it's amazing how good you've got it living in America, really, compared to other parts of the world. You shouldn't feel guilty about that. You shouldn't feel you should be proud of it, but at the same time you shouldn't take it for granted. There's so much good you could do. There's so many good things that you can offer the planet, having those advantages. And then sadly, it's just a nature of humans, I guess. When you're in your constituency, and everyone moans, and I grew up in England, and it's a part of the culture. But like, again, there's always a space for gratitude. There really, really is. It was VCon. I went to VCon festival, just so you know. VCon, it was amazing. It was really, really, really good. It was a fascinating festival. Busta Rhymes was playing on Thursday night, which was awesome. But it wasn't just that. It was more to do with the fact that it was the people there that made it so special. And like I say, being around so many prolific artists, prolific people in the world, wildly successful people, and yet everybody there, was part of that same energy, which again, Gary Vee, the leader, very much to do with kindness, empathy, support, optimism, believe, dream, it can happen, and that is, like I said, that's why it had to be in America, that festival, really, even though He was saying it could be in Dubai, it could be in Canada too. But it was just that whole ethos of, you know, appreciation and don't take things for granted. Action, you know. There was a guy, there was one guy who talked, who did an amazing talk as well. They're all amazing talks. I mean, I was very inspired. But just bringing it back to the whole conjunction of the square of Pluto and Jupiter and Pluto, the energy of this Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius, is about to shift. It's going to go back into Capricorn. So we get the themes that we've had since 2008 playing out again. But we can't go back. There's always an evolution with astrology. There's always an evolution with this interpretation. We're always arriving, becoming, you know, if you look at Plato and stuff like that. But this agency is something I did want to mention on this chat today. Agency, you know, is a very important thing, you know, and look it up, you know, the idea of agency, you know, what takes us to a place. Like, for example, I knew that I had to go to that festival. It was last minute, though. It really, really was. It was last minute. It was a decision. And not everybody could do that, because if you don't have Ethereum, or you've never bought Ethereum, and you don't know how to do it because it was an NFT, even though there was lots of guidance, you know, if you really wanted to go, you know, you wouldn't have been able to go, you know, if you didn't have an NFT, for example, like a VCon NFT, you know, which is what everybody who had one got a free ticket, then that just automatically stopped people from going, you know. Now, I'm very lucky because, you know, Eugenie is canny at this sort of stuff, so I'm very lucky to have a younger wife who is a bit more better with the technology than me, you know. So it was a team effort. With me and her, it's always a team effort, you know. And that enabled me, you know, to go there because it was last minute. And literally I got a flight that night and went the next day. And it was I just knew I had to go. And I'm so pleased that I did, because if I hadn't have gone, I would not be having this experience right now. I would not know the potential. You know, I would not have met all these amazing people that, you know, I've got to follow up now. That's the work. That's the next stage. Because if you don't do anything about it, then it's just passes you by. You know, you've got to follow up. Like, for example, you listen to this talk, follow up, you know, get a reading, send me a DM, get the launch kit, speak to the team, join the community. You know, it's just things like that, you know. The best thing, like I said, for me is to find out more about you guys, you know, to know that what it is that you're here to do, and we can do this together. And like I say, VCon absolutely, you know, sent that shockwave out there, you know, it really, really did. And I've just got my final trip at the end of the month to Detroit, financial astrology lecture seminar. And then I'll be ready, you know, in June I will be pulling all of this together. You know, my trip to New York was very, very powerful too. And then suddenly we're going to start snowballing. We're going to really start rocket ship, go up. And, you know, we're going to have to see what happens this summer. You know, there could easily be a lot of discontent. There could easily be a lot of problems, you know, that exist in the world. But again, we've got to discern. We've got to focus on love. We've got to focus on action, joy, happiness. Focus on potential. Focus on the good stuff, you know. Not get caught in the fear, the negativity, you know, the bad stuff, because there's so much of it. You know, there's so much opportunity to go into, you know, World War III, and yeah, we can't be ignorant to the reality of what's going on in the world, but we don't really know what's going on as well. I mean, even with astrology, you know, there's only so much you can learn from it. You know, the best astrologers will get it 70% right. You know, maybe machine learning and AI will change all of that, and it'll become even more accurate. You know, and then there won't be a need for many astrologers. You know, I think that probably will happen. But again, the thing is with technology, it needs humans to manage it or to lead it to a certain extent. I mean, they talk about the singularity, and it's coming. You know, it's true. But still, you know, again, what I loved about a lot of the Star Trek stuff or the Next Generation stuff, you know, Data, it was a really interesting character, and he was still trying to learn empathy and emotion, and again, all of these things are human qualities, and we should never lose sight of our humanity. And that's when kindness, empathy, compassion, support, you know, all of these things are so important. And I just happen to be the sort of person that really thrives off that. You know, I thrive off human interaction. I thrive off serving people. I thrive off making people feel better. You know, DJing is a great example of how to do that. You know, it can just make people feel better, you know. But obviously the healing is even more prolific. And obviously my astrology readings is the reason why people do it. So all I want to say to you all is this: be optimistic. You know, that's the real secret right now. Yeah, we've all got personal biases. I'm a Sagittarian. You know, I'm always focused on optimism. I could have a certain degree of naivety to me as well because of it. But be optimistic, you know, be excited. Remember that, you know, life is short. You know, that's an obvious one. You know, whenever we're in this situation where we suffer grief, you know, loss, and that's been a big theme, it makes that even more real. But you've got to get into acceptance. You've got to understand that life is short, you know, there's beginnings and endings. And then again, that was a big theme at this conference, you know, they talked a lot about, you know, understanding death and we reject it, we run away from it, you know. We're not going to be here forever, you know, there's people passing all the time. So what are you going to do with your life? You know, what's going to give you that urgency, you know, to make a difference or to be happy, you know, to be your authentic self. And there's so much out there in the world. I mean, that was one thing that my mum said, actually. I remember when she loved about England, you know, there's so many resources that are for free there, you know, and you will find a way, you know, like, for example, in the conference that I just went to, the people there, you know, and what we can achieve just with those, let's say 5,000 people. And again, you know, you can easily DM people, you can, you know, I'm going to be making friends with all the speakers there. And again, highly successful people. And just imagine what you can do. You know, you come with your idea, you know, there's a merchandising thing that we're going to be doing in accessible astrology. You know, we're looking at all sorts of stuff. And anything's possible. So I just want everyone to really, really tap into that. Yes, the last 3 years has been stressful. You know, there's been a lot of loss, there's been a lot of change, a lot of movement, a lot of instability, uncertainty. But there's always a way. You know, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, one of the best books you could ever read, you know, when you understand the nature of difficulty and how there's a way to get out of hell, you know, how there's a way to get from the worst environment to have meaning. You know, there's always a way. And the people, it's about community. This is what Aquarius is all about. The people, as we connect, especially with the technology, and how we support each other, and how we listen to each other, and how we get over our fear. You know, like, say, sharing is such a brilliant thing. If you ever do any sort of ceremony or any sort of like alternative healing, medicine ceremony, things like that, it's a brilliant thing that happens whenever the end of the ceremony, you know, the sharing is such a brilliant thing. Same thing for any sort of like society where you're having to talk about your emotions and feelings. And it's certainly not something a lot of people do in England, from where I'm from anyway. You know, you definitely wouldn't do that, you know. But in America it's a little bit different, I suppose. But when you've hit rock bottom and then you have to share because you're going to lose everything, you lose your family, you know, you have to do it because there's so many people like you. I mean, the most saddest situation is when we see people who commit suicide, or worse, you know, I've seen friends, sadly, you know, who drunk themselves to death. You know, it's really shocking. And, you know, why did that happen? You know, and it's a very hard thing, you know, when you're not a therapist, you're not, you know, a medicine man or anything like that, to deal with that sort of thing, because, you know, again, there is a certain timing to all of this. Like, now I'm coming into acceptance. I feel it was short-lived, my parents, you know, on this earth. But there's always a plus side to it as well. They didn't have to suffer at old age. And, you know, even though I'm an orphan, you know, I spent a lot of time with my parents, you know. I mean, I've got to be really grateful for that and, you know, what they gave me and everything. You know, there are obviously other stories where people have lost children, and that's a really hard thing to deal with. You know, how do you come into acceptance with something like that? You know, obviously there's so many war-torn places where there's, you know, and refugees, asylum, you know, all of these horrendous things, you know, that exist in the world through greed, profit, war. And sometimes people just pass, you know, without, unexpectedly, you know, like, for example, that Charlie Rocket, you know, he had a brain tumour and then he worked a way to sort of deal with it. But you never know how long you're going to be here for. So life is for living. You've got to be grateful. you've got to show your unique gifts and abilities. And you know, even I was depressed, you know, in the last couple of months, because obviously it's just been a very torrid experience, you know, relocating, losing family, the whole COVID thing. Everyone's going through a certain degree of negativity, depression for everything that's happened. But what we've got to do is we've got to do our best, you know, to be present, to be grateful, taking small steps to where we want to go. And then it's all about getting over ourselves. Like I say, you know, Gary Vee was so cool what he said, you know, just the sort of things we did at Dale Carnegie, you know. Speak to the person next to you, like go speak to your neighbour, you know, see if they're okay. You know, the worst thing that I saw when I worked in the whole nursing home and elderly care industry was seeing the isolation that people had, you know, that how they get boxed into these apartments or rooms and they're on their own and they don't want to ask for help. You know, that's the thing, because you know, you get so proud and you get so, I'm independent, you know, this Western sort of mentality. And what a great thing is just to knock on the door and say, how are you doing? You know, can I help you in any way? You know, and it starts again with the small things. It's like having just smiling to someone, you know, just doing something considerate, kind, thoughtful, you know, again, what Gary Vee talks about then, thoughtful, you know, and it's nothing new that he's saying. These things have been said from other people, but it's not about that. He's doing something about it. He's trying to get people together who think like him, and we can all do that. We could all have our own little community, you know, even if it's just 10, 15, 20 people. We all think the same. We could all help each other. And then, you know what? We're going to get through this turbulent time. We really are. We're going to get through the madness of what is potentially coming this decade, because it is massive changes still about to happen. Huge. We could be scared of the AI. We could be scared of automation, you know. We can be resentful towards the people that we know. You know, there's all these things that we can do. You know, we can exist in negative emotion, or we can work out who we are. And if you need to get a reading with me, for example. If you need to go see an EMDR therapist, we do have one in Accessible Astrology, for example. Do you need to work out your career? Go to see Jessica of Accessible Astrology. You know, she can help with that. Obviously, Eugenia is very good at working out trauma in people. And there's all sorts of other things as well. You know, there's all sorts we're about to offer. Write a poem. You know, go to a stand-up place. Laugh. There's just so many ways to get through this that once we're over the other side of this, I genuinely believe, you know, we are looking more at 2028, you know, 2032. But if we make the difference, if we get on with who we are, what we're here to do, if we show a bit of kindness, empathy, compassion, love, serenity, then as a community, there's much more of us, by the way, you know, in terms of, let's say, any negativity or naive optimism. You know, you can find a balance. There's so much more of us in the middle. Then we really will make the difference and have a wonderful time on Earth. And we can't escape certain things, you know, but we can definitely change the outcome. And you've got to believe that. You've got to have that hope, that optimism, that drive to make the difference. And then you'll have a fulfilling life, exciting life, and you'll have a legacy as well. And that's what we're really, really all about. That's what Tareck Adeeb is really, really all about. So I'm pumped. You know, I'm very, very excited. You know, I've been massively inspired through going to VCon. I think Gary Vee's the man. You need to know about him. Yeah. And not just that, when I expand now, you know, I've got my wonderful team, you know, and when I really start showing what we're going to do, everyone who's listening right now, we've got something to do, you know, whether it's art, music, philosophy, merchandising, whatever it may be, healing. We're all going to make sure that everyone in this community can also thrive, you know. We're really going to make that happen. So be optimistic. Yes, we're going to be coming into some interesting summer months, for sure. But again, when Pluto goes back into Aquarius at the end of the year, when Jupiter conjuncts Uranus in April next year, that's the real key date now, is what I've worked out. Obviously, we still have eclipses to go in October. But wow, once we get to April of next year, with everything that we're about to achieve, anything is going to be possible. And, you know, obviously I've got to show that it's possible, and that it's all about proving that it's possible. And that means hard work, doing it, and showing, like obviously having the proof. And if that happens, and it can, then you can do it too, So let's not get into fear. Let's not get into depression. I mean, it can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone when you become homeless, You're only like just a few steps away from hero to zero. It can happen. But hopefully there's always good people around. There's always like that angelic energy to help, just to give you that little prop, that little bit of hope, that little bit of inspiration for it not to fall so badly, and that's where humour's a very, very big one as well. And also just being able to relax is so important, get out of the ego. And then when you can relax, be in gratitude, trust is a huge one too, then it can easily happen. You can have the dreams that you want. And, you've got to remember that, that not everybody has it as good as well. So never forget that. If you've got water, you've got food, you've got these things, never take it for granted. Always be grateful. All right, so, we've made it past really the other side of what I've been talking about all year, the reason why I've been doing these lives all year. And obviously a lot of those were on accessible astrology. And we're so close now to coming to the next stage of this year, once we get to June. And I tell you, anyone who's connected to me, who's in my community, anyone who understands the journey, again, Sagittarius very much to do with the journey, be optimistic, think big, don't think small, think big, anything is possible, have a delusional sense of optimism. And it's going to be fascinating to see what we're about to create now. I really needed that boost of excitement, joy, happiness, and an awareness that there is many like-minded people out there. That's why going to these events are so important, because you've got to physicalize it. Seeing everyone on these screens is great, but you've got to meet face to face. It's a very, very important thing. And we will be doing retreats as well. There's another area of the business now that we're looking at with breath work and stuff. So we're starting to realise that's a very powerful healing modality. So that's something that we're looking at. All right, so I think that's pretty much everything I need to say. I don't know how long I've been talking. But all I will say is be optimistic, be excited. We're at the next stage of the year now. This week's a pretty chilled out week. Next month there's a lot to come, and July too. The node's shifting in July. But really it's about focusing now. September, October, the next eclipse is when we get to that stage of the year. But really it's April, it's spring next year, 2024. That's when things can go really big. I don't think Pluto in Aquarius is as bad as what Pluto in Capricorn was. And I think Jupiter in Taurus is going to be very positive. But again, if you are going down the bifurcation, you've got to make adjustments quickly to get up a healing, change in direction, wake up, yeah? If you're in the monotone, I just steady away, everything's just plodding on. Be grateful. You're not in Ukraine, you're not in war-torn countries. Be grateful that it's like that. But if you're going up, it's time to get excited. It's time to really start taking action, because anything is possible. All the dreams that you ever thought were possible can come true. It's time now. It's time to really get on with it. Work hard, focus, grow, become big, because that's what is going to make the difference. Okay, so with all that in mind, thanks ever so much for everyone turning up right here and listening. I don't think there's really any questions. But yeah, you'll get to hear about everything and all the amazing people that I've just met, not just here, but in New York also. Just got Detroit to go next. And then hopefully I'll be able to start really focusing on getting the website out and getting the products out. And I know the financial astrology thing, I know that the financial side everyone's very interested in. So I'm sure we'll have a product that's affordable for everyone for that too. Okay, with that in mind, I think it's time to say goodbye. Thanks for listening. Dream big, feel good. Remember, we're over the worst of the year now. It's time to get really focused. Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, April 2024. That is the big prize as far as I'm concerned. Okay, on that note, take care.